think one way to understand what I'm doing in this work and what I'm sharing on these calls, my writing and so on is through the words and little inquiries that we do and our conversations, hoping to illuminate the myriad ways in which what we're looking for, what we seem to be searching for in life, and imagine is somehow missing, which is why we're searching for it. My hope is to gather to illuminate how what we're looking for is here. The myriad things we're searching for are present as our very experience right now, just as it is, actually, without it having to be transformed in the slightest. Just its very nature is intrinsically, you can imagine the different things humans could be searching for: fullness, completeness, wholeness, openness, vitality, aliveness, right? Meaningfulness. That reality is intrinsically these things, intrinsically that fulfillment, that vibrancy. And so that's what I'm always inviting us to look and see, the way in which, if we imagine that is not the case, even in subtle ways, we can look and discover how our experience is just rich beyond measure, full beyond measure. Without the conditions of it actually needing to change, the seeming conditions, the seeming parameters of it, the ways it appears to be based on how we are maybe more typically describing it and holding it conceptually. So let's just together start the only place we can start, which is with what's here, the sense of what's here, this feeling of this basic, you could say the most basic sense we have of something being here, right? We could give out different names, but we could call it experiencing. We could call it simply being. Sense of the beingness of this moment, the presence of this moment. I was just feeling that. Of course, that's all we're ever feeling, but just noticing that we're feeling this presence at all times, no matter how what's present is being described, what's happening sort of fundamentally, most basically, is the feeling of the moment. All there is ever the feeling of the moment. I don't mean to minimize it when I say all there is, because it turns out the feeling of this moment is profound. So just feel this that's being felt, this presence of what's here. And of course, there's likely a sense of a whole host of things that are here, right? The myriad phenomena populating the field of experience, the field of presence, of what's present. But just feel this presence, the presence of here, the presence of now, the presence of being. And as you do so, you may notice something that happens quite automatically and generally without much noticing of it. And that is this sense of you, a subject, noticing, feeling, presence, right? It may seem like that. It's certainly one of the ways reality can seem to be, that I'm here and I'm feeling a presence that even as subtly is sort of over there, being noticed, being felt, right? And if that is the case, if you have that sense of this subtle or even not so subtle subject object kind of differentiation, subject feeling this objective, the beingness of reality, the presence of reality, of your reality. And just notice the sense of the one noticing, the one feeling presence, and just appreciate how whatever it is that's knowing this moment, that's feeling this moment, whatever that is, the mystery of that is, of course, itself pure presence, isn't it? That's how it's known. In other words, we know the world, presumably outside of us, as presence, right? The light is present, the sounds are present. Thoughts are present, right? Showing up as that which is being perceived, that which is being felt, right? And then there's this that's feeling, that's noticing, that's perceiving. And of course, it's present too, isn't it? So it's presence all the way back, you could say. The objects are present and the subject perceiving those objects is pure presence as well, isn't it? That's how we would even know or imagine that we are a subject, that we are a self, is because there's the feeling of that, right? The felt sense of being someone. In other words, what we are is most basically, like everything else, pure presence. And so from this vantage, there's not someone feeling presence, feeling the presence of what's here. That someone, that subject is pure presence. So there's just presence here. The presence of the subject completely blended with the presence of the object. Just a singular continuum of presence, a continuum of being. And feel that. Again, you are feeling this continuum of presence, seamless. Even though it can certainly be felt to be two things, the perceiver and the perceived, the feeler and the felt, the noticer and whatever is being noticed. It can seem that way and be experienced that way, and nothing wrong with that. We're just noticing this other way of encountering what's here. Or you could say another way that this actually is being encountered, which is as one seamless whole. Just this scintillating, alive, solid, impenetrable, indestructible presence. Feel how it's impossible for this presence to go anywhere, possible for it to go away. It is that which is inclusive of all things, of all moments, of all descriptions, of all thoughts, all feelings, all sensations, all memories. What is most basic about everything that appears, right, is its appearance. That's what's most fundamental, is that this is here, that this is appearing, that this is present, regardless of how it's being characterized. What's most basic is that it's here. As you feel this presence, which no matter where attention may wander off, travel around the vast, borderless field of experience, it's always encountering, it's always arriving at the presence of whatever is appearing, right? So this is the unavoidable. Presence is not something to find. Presence is what is being found in every flash instant. So just feeling this presence and see if you might sense the way in which intrinsic to this presence, the beingness of this moment, the beingness of you, the beingness of everything, the singular beingness, is intrinsically full. It's full of presence, the presence of this. It's completely full and whole. Whole because there's no pieces, there's just this wholeness that appears as many pieces and many parts. There's an intrinsic joy, an intrinsic fulfillment in this beingness. It's intrinsically at ease because there's nothing pushing on it. There's nothing imposing itself upon it. There's nothing else outside of it. It's simply being. Beingness is simply being itself, isn't it? And it's at ease, just being itself, complete equanimity. Its very nature is wholly undivided, indivisible. You can't cut off a piece of presence and separate it out from the whole. It just isn't, it isn't that way. Because even if you could imagine visually like chopping off a piece of the field of experiencing somehow, and then there would be like the field of experience and then some gap or space, and then that piece that you just cut off of presence. But that the space itself, if there were such a thing, would also be present. So there's just no There's no destroying this presence. There's no splitting it. There's no dividing it. Feel that. Feel what that's like, the sense of that. And again, if you notice in a subtle way that you're somehow like standing outside of the presence looking at it, like it's over there, just notice that again, the looker is pure presence, the presumed looker, the presumed noticer, right? There's just presence, you could say, noticing itself, feeling itself, touching itself, encountering itself, reveling in itself, exploring itself as we are. We are presence, exploring presence, intelligence, investigating intelligence, light, dancing with light. And really, whether it's being encountered maybe more explicitly in this undivided way we're sort of tuning into and investigating right now, or it feels like it's split itself apart and it's encountering itself as separate objects. In either case, that's what's present, right? So a moment of complete undivided, samadhi, just the singularity, no subject, no object, just this, is what's present, or could be what's present in a moment. And then a sense of, I'm an individual encountering a bunch of other individuals. That's the way presence is looking, could look or feel or be sensed in the next instant. And in either case, it's still just presence, right? There's a saying in the Zen tradition, I believe it's the Zen tradition, that the songwriter Donovan wrote a song about. First there is a mountain, then there is no mountain, then there is. That's exactly what I'm speaking to. Ordinary, if you will, kind of conventional reality notions are, oh, here I am, and there's a mountain, and I've labeled the mountain as a separate phenomena, a separate object that's being perceived. First, there is a mountain. Then, if it happens to be the case for us that we get curious about what mountains actually are and what I am, the apparent perceiver of that mountain, and I investigate it as we're doing, we can discover that there's just a seamless whole here. There's nothing with autonomous existence. There's no autonomous waves of phenomena separated out from their context. So in that sense, there's no phenomena. Even though it can look like mountains and skies and clouds and trees and humans and all these independently existing phenomena somehow separated out from their context. But it's really, that's not the only way it can be perceived. So we can perceive that there is no mountain, like literally, just as there are no waves, there's just the sea. So yeah, so first there's a mountain, there's the mountain, here I am looking at the mountain. Then there can be a recognition that no, there is no mountain, there are no objects, there's just this. And then it would seem that the primary way this reality, this singular reality dances is as otherness, right? It's constantly experiencing itself as separate, as other. And that seems to be a way it can seemingly encounter itself, is as other, right? Like if I was completely fused with the song and there was no separation, there would be no song, right? There is no mountain. If I am the mountain, because there's no subject and object, and there, in a sense, there is no mountain. There is nothing there, right? So it almost, for there to be things that are encountered, they have to seemingly separate themselves out. And so first there is a mountain, then there is no mountain, then there is, like right now, like here there are all these people having a Zoom call together, right? And yet that which looks like people in conversation with one another is also not merely that, but is some inconceivable dance of pure, boundless, undivided, fathomless mystery. And that can look like what the world, seems to look like from that kind of more conventional standpoint. Just like I can look out at the sea and see a bunch of waves that appear to be dancing with one another, or maybe crashing into one another, right? As waves will sometimes do. And yet it is one thing dancing with itself, isn't it? Literally. There is one ocean that makes, through its activity, through its being, makes what we call waves. And the waves can then seem to interact and have a kind of cause-effect relationship. This wave crashes into that and causes that wave to take a different shape. And we'll describe it like that. But meanwhile, it is one sea, isn't it? It is literally one sea. And in that sense, there aren't waves crashing into one another. There's just one sea dancing. And so right now there is one sea of existence dancing, moving, unfolding, appearing, just throwing words at it. First there is, first there is a wave, then there is no wave, then there is. And there's fundamentally no difference in any of those perspectives. And yet, from another standpoint, great difference across those different perspectives in terms of how life can be encountered. But they're all the pure presence of what is, the undivided presence of what is. And that's being felt right now. Even if we drift off into imagination and the mind's interpretations of things, which is what one of the things reality loves to do, apparently, because it's doing it all the time. That's just its dance. That's its wave in that moment. That's its unfolding. That's its expression.